The diner buzzed with the low hum of neon and coffee machines when the news played on the corner TV. Voss Industries to host its annual charity gala. CEO Damien Voss offering one golden ticket to an ordinary citizen. The words barely registered with Lila as she refilled a customer's mug. Life was small here, contained within chipped cups and late-night laughter. But when her name was called the next morning, live, broadcasted to millions, the world split open. Cameras, reporters, flashing bulbs. Chosen at random, they said. Her apron felt heavier than gold, her pulse louder than the applause she couldn't see. Somewhere in a skyscraper's glass tower, a man she'd never met was already rewriting her story. By afternoon, the diner was a stage. Reporters pushed against the glass, microphones reaching through cracks in the door. Harper tried to shield her friend, but curiosity burned hotter than protection. Lila's name was now whispered between lattes and headlines. She wasn't a waitress anymore. She was a story. The man behind it all, Damien Voss, remained a mystery of power and poise, a ghost of fortune glimpsed through screens. And still, under the noise, a question pulsed. Why her? The limousine arrived before sunset, sleek and silent, like a secret. Lila's trembling hand hovered above its polished door handle, as if touching it might change her life forever. The driver, stone-faced in black, spoke only once. "Mr. Voss awaits." She glanced back at the diner, her world now framed in neon and memory, and stepped inside. Through tinted windows, the city unfurled in streaks of gold and steel. Towers rose like monuments to ambition, and Lila's reflection merged with their mirrored facades. She thought of Damien Voss, a name that felt like a place she'd never reach. Somewhere, he was waiting. And for reasons she didn't yet understand, so was destiny. When the car stopped, the world turned gold. Voss Tower pierced the clouds above her, its glass skin alive with light. A doorman greeted her like royalty. Flashes burst from every corner. As she stepped into the marble atrium, time slowed. Opulence, silence, then a voice like velvet and steel. Miss Monroe. Her pulse faltered. He was real and smiling. The grand ballroom shimmered like a dream stitched in gold. Lila stood beneath crystal chandeliers, every gaze a quiet question, every camera a whisper. Damien was beside her, calm, magnetic, untouchable. He introduced her as if she were someone born of elegance, not coffee stains and diner lights. The orchestra swelled, and for a heartbeat, the world spun around them. His hand grazed hers, deliberate and rehearsed. Yet something unspoken flickered in his eyes, an echo of recognition that felt too intimate for a stranger. She smiled for the cameras, but inside, fear and wonder danced in equal measure. He led her through a maze of power. Politicians, investors, women who smiled with polished teeth and whispered envy. Every step she took beside him felt like walking through glass. Damien's grip was steady but distant, his charm calculated, his laughter practiced. Still, when their eyes met away from the crowd, something softened. "Breathe," he murmured under his breath. It wasn't a command. It was concern. And for that moment, she did. Midway through the evening, a host invited Damien on stage for the charity presentation. Lila watched him from below, his voice deep and commanding, his smile effortless. Yet behind it, she sensed something hollow. The gala was a performance, not a celebration. When he thanked his lovely guest, applause rose like thunder, and all eyes turned to her. Heat climbed her throat, and beneath her practiced smile, she wondered if she'd ever been chosen at all, or simply used. Later, in the garden terrace beyond the ballroom, the night turned quiet. Stars glimmered against glass towers, and the air smelled of roses and rain. Damien joined her, his mask of confidence slipping just enough to reveal fatigue. "You're handling this better than most," he said, voice low, almost tender. She laughed softly. You mean better than I should? Silence lingered between them, heavy with something neither wanted to name. The city stretched below, two worlds meeting on borrowed ground. When the gala ended, and the crowd thinned into luxury cars and laughter, Lila lingered by the entrance, unsure if she belonged in any of it. Damien appeared once more, offering his arm as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Our night isn't over, he said. The words carried neither invitation nor command, only inevitability. As the doors closed behind them, the golden world faded, leaving only two silhouettes walking into something far more dangerous than fame. Curiosity. Morning sunlight poured through the penthouse windows, gilding the world in a quiet, deceptive calm. Lila sat opposite Damien at a table too large for conversation, the city sprawling beneath them like a painting. Iris Vale stood beside him, all precision and poise, sliding a folder across the glass. A temporary arrangement, she said. Words like discretion, representation, public image echoed without weight. Damien's gaze stayed fixed on Lila. Not cold, not kind, but searching. You don't owe me anything, he said softly, yet every syllable felt like a promise disguised as mercy. She signed her name, ink trembling on the page, unaware that she'd just bound her heart to something far more dangerous than a contract. The days that followed blurred between fittings, interviews, and orchestrated smiles. Lila learned how to walk beside a man who owned every room, how to answer questions without giving truth. Damien watched her with quiet calculation, as if trying to remember something he'd forgotten. In stolen moments, between cameras, between breaths, his veneer cracked. She caught glimpses of grief hiding behind discipline, of loneliness stitched into perfection. And in those moments, the script became real. The first public event after the gala was a dinner party at the Voss estate. Private, intimate, and crawling with silent judgment. Lila moved through the glittering maze of glass and marble, feeling more like an exhibit than a guest. Damien was attentive, protective almost, yet always half a breath away. When their fingers brushed while reaching for a glass, the moment stretched longer than it should have. The lie they shared was beginning to taste like truth. Later that night, Lila wandered the estate alone, her heels clicking through marble corridors filled with art and silence. She paused before a portrait, an oil painting of a woman with haunting familiarity. The resemblance struck like lightning. Same eyes, same warmth, same impossible grace. Her pulse raced. Damien entered quietly, following her gaze. Her name was Elise, he said, voice breaking just enough to sound human. Lila turned, the truth dawning like thunder. She wasn't chosen by chance. She was chosen because she looked like the ghost he couldn't forget. The night ended in silence heavy enough to break glass. Lila returned to her room, heart hammering with anger, pity, and something far worse, understanding. Damien hadn't fallen for her. He'd resurrected someone else through her face. Yet beneath the lie was a pain so raw she couldn't hate him. Standing by the window, she stared out at the city lights below, their reflections blurring like tears she refused to shed. Somewhere in the darkness, he was doing the same. Morning came dressed in silence. The mansion, usually alive with staff and motion, felt suspended in breath. Lila moved through its halls with a heaviness that no silk could hide. When she entered Damien's office, he was already there, sleeves rolled, eyes fixed on the skyline. You found the portrait, he said before she could speak. The confession lived in the space between them. He told her about Elise, his fiancée, lost 3 years ago in an accident that had hollowed him out. Lila listened, torn between empathy and fury. You used me, she whispered. Damien's reply was softer than guilt. I was trying to remember what it felt like to be alive. That night, memories spoke louder than words. Lila stood in Elise's old dressing room, every shelf still lined with her ghost. Perfume bottles untouched, gowns wrapped in silk. A photo on the vanity showed Elise laughing, Damien's arm around her. The resemblance was cruel. Lila traced the image with trembling fingers, the truth twisting inside her. She wasn't just his replacement. She was a mirror he refused to shatter. But when she caught her own reflection in the glass, it wasn't Elise's face she saw. It was a woman breaking free from a lie. Iris found her there. "You weren't supposed to see this," she said, voice low but not unkind. Lila turned, demanding truth. Iris hesitated, then confessed. The gala, the contract, everything had been orchestrated to rehabilitate Damien's public image after years of grief-fueled withdrawal. Elise's death had ruined him. The board had threatened his position, and Lila's face had been the convenient salvation. Betrayal tasted metallic on her tongue. "So, I'm just another business decision," she said. "You were supposed to be..." And yet, even Iris couldn't hide the smallest tremor of pity. Lila stormed into Damien's study, fury burning through grief. "Was any of it real?" she demanded. He looked up from his desk, eyes hollow yet unflinching. "You were never meant to replace her," he said. "Then why me?" she pressed. His answer came like thunder after silence. "Because the day I saw you, I remembered what it was like to feel something again." Tears welled, not for him, but for herself. Because she wanted to believe him. Love and deception had begun to look identical. Later, in the quiet aftermath of confrontation, Damien found Lila outside by the pool, barefoot beneath the stars. He offered no excuses, only honesty stripped of power. "I don't know how to be with someone who isn't her," he admitted. "Then maybe learn," she said, voice trembling but steady. The night held its breath as their reflections met on the water's surface, one fading, one becoming. Beneath the ghost of another life, something new began to stir. Raw, uncertain, and real. Rumors spread like wildfire, licking at the edges of their fragile truce. By morning, headlines screamed. Waitress turned heiress. Damien Voss' secret scandal. Paparazzi swarmed the estate. Lenses pressed to iron gates. Lila's face, once unknown, was now a commodity. Her image dissected. Her story rewritten. Damien's PR team scrambled for control while Iris' voice cut through chaos. Someone leaked the contract. The silence that followed felt sharp as glass. Lila turned to Damien, searching for answers, but his expression was unreadable. The man who had saved her from obscurity now looked capable of breaking her in half. Hours later, the board meeting unfolded like a storm behind closed glass. Investors, restless and cruel, accused Damien of recklessness, of turning his grief into scandal. Lila waited outside, listening to muffled voices, her own name thrown like a weapon. When the doors opened, Damien emerged, eyes like steel, mask firmly restored. "It's over," he said. "They're forcing me to step down." Lila stared, heart cracking under the weight of guilt and disbelief. "Because of me." His silence was answer enough. She wanted to reach for him, but he was already walking away, swallowed by the empire he built. And now was losing. The betrayal came not from him, but from within. That evening, Iris appeared at Lila's door, her composure cracked for the first time. "It was Julian," she confessed. "Damien's brother." The leak had been orchestrated. A calculated strike to take control of Voss Industries. Julian had always wanted what Damien had. His company, his legacy, even his ghosts. Rage bloomed in Lila's chest. She had been a pawn in a war between brothers. And yet she couldn't shake the image of Damien standing alone in his ruin, taking the fall for sins, not his own. That night, Lila found Damien on the terrace, a bottle half empty beside him, his tie discarded. It was Julian, she said, her voice trembling. He didn't look surprised. I know. The admission was weary, almost tender. He's been waiting years to finish what grief began. She sat beside him, their silence heavier than any truth. For the first time, she saw not the billionaire or the broken man, but the boy who had lost everything and learned to hide it behind money. Then let me help you fight, she whispered. But Damien only smiled. The kind that hurts to see. You already have. By dawn, the world knew everything. The tabloids feasted on their pain. The internet crowned her the liar, the manipulator, the fraud. Reporters shouted outside her small apartment when she fled the mansion, her name twisted into ridicule. Damien tried to call, but she couldn't bear to answer. Every word of love now sounded like a lie wrapped in pity. Alone in the room she once dreamed in, Lila tore off the jewelry, the gowns, the illusion, and wept for the girl who thought she could change a man haunted by ghosts. Days bled together in silence until the knock came. Harper stood at the door, eyes fierce with worry. He's losing everything, she said. Lila didn't need to ask who. The news filled every channel. Voss Industries under investigation, stocks collapsing, Damien branded as unstable and unfit to lead. It was the Empire's final unmasking. Yet what haunted her most wasn't his fall. It was the memory of his quiet confession. The way his voice cracked when he said he didn't know how to love anymore. She could have stayed gone. She should have. But the thought of him alone in that tower of ghosts pulled her back toward the fire. When she arrived at Voss Tower, the guards barely recognized her. Hair tousled, clothes plain. No trace of the woman who once glimmered on red carpets. The lobby was deserted, a monument of silence and power undone. She found Damien in his office, glass shattered, files scattered, fallen feathers. You shouldn't be here, he said without turning. Neither should you, she answered. His laugh was hollow, the sound of a man standing at the edge. They've taken everything. She stepped closer. Not everything. The words trembled, but they reached him. For the first time, he turned, and the mask was gone. She helped him clean the wreckage, both of them silent except for the sound of sweeping glass. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw. Julian's filed for full control. He'll gut what's left. Lila placed a hand on his arm. Gentle, certain. Then fight back. He shook his head. I've done enough damage. She stepped closer. Eyes fierce. Then do something that isn't about power. Tell the truth. Her words pierced the fog like light. In that instant, she wasn't a savior or a symbol, just a mirror reflecting the man he could still be. The next day, Damien called a press conference. Cameras lined the marble steps where he once announced his empire's triumphs. Lila stood behind the crowd, unseen, watching as he faced the storm had built. I lied, he began, voice steady but stripped of armor. He confessed to the contract, to the manipulation, to his grief. But she reminded me that honesty can't come from pretending. The crowd murmured, hungry for scandal, but in his eyes there was only release. For the first time, he wasn't defending his empire. He was freeing it. When the press dispersed and the city quieted, Damien found her waiting at the end of the plaza. No cameras, no contracts, just them. You didn't have to come, he said. I did, she replied. Someone had to remind you that the truth doesn't destroy, it saves. His gaze softened, heavy with gratitude and ache. And what about you? She smiled faintly, tears catching the last of the light. I think I finally stopped being her. The wind shifted, carrying away the weight of what they'd been. In its wake remained something fragile, almost pure. The possibility of starting again. Weeks passed. The empire he built was no longer his, and the silence that followed was both punishment and peace. Damien retreated to the coastal house once meant for Elise, a place untouched since her death. When Lila arrived unannounced, The sea was wild. Wind curling through the open doors. "You found me," he murmured. "You weren't hiding," she answered. They stood at the edge of the balcony, the ocean's roar beneath them. "I don't know what I can offer you now," he said. She looked out over the horizon. "Maybe nothing. Maybe that's why it's real this time." Inside, the house smelled of dust and salt. Elise's ghost lingered in every framed photograph, every untouched shelf. Damien watched Lila move through it, unafraid of memory. "You can't keep building monuments to grief," she said softly. "It's not loyalty, it's surrender." He exhaled, the sound almost a sob. "I thought forgetting her would be betrayal." "No," she said, turning toward him. "Forgetting yourself is." The words landed like prayer. For the first time, he looked at her not as a replacement, but as herself, alive, flawed, real. Something inside him finally loosened. They spent the day walking the shoreline, silence weaving between them like fragile thread. The sea was endless, forgiving. Damien spoke of his brother, of the Empire, of mistakes carved too deep to undo. Lila listened, her presence a balm rather than a cure. When the sun began to sink, he said quietly, "You were the only thing I didn't plan." She smiled, sad, knowing. "That's why you can trust it." The tide crept around their feet, the horizon swallowing the last of the light. For once, the future didn't need a name. It only needed courage. That evening, they lit a fire in the old stone hearth. Lila found a stack of sealed letters addressed to Elise but never sent. Damien hesitated, then tossed them into the flames, one by one, watching the paper curl into smoke. "Goodbye," he whispered. Not to the past, but to the man who had lived inside it. Lila reached for his hand, and for the first time, he didn't pull away. "What now?" he asked. "Now we live," she said simply. Outside, the wind carried the ashes toward the sea, as if the universe itself exhaled. Months later, the world had moved on. Voss Industries thrived under new hands, scandals forgotten by a fickle press. But on a quiet morning, in a small coastal cafe, a waitress refilled a stranger's cup. Only this time, it was Lila's cafe, and the stranger was Damien, smiling like a man reborn. "Still like it black?" she asked. "Always," he said, eyes soft with memory. The past didn't vanish, it simply found peace. She was no longer the waitress who waited for fate to find her. She was the woman who chose her own ending, and him only if he walked beside her, not ahead.